Comic Boom here to talk about Star Wars The Last Jedi. I know there's just tons of reviews out there for Star Wars The Last Jedi. I just gotta get my 2 cents in. I want to give a shout out to Spike Valentine. Him and I talk through direct messaging on Twitter, and he's a script editor, writer himself, so he's always got some good insights. And we've tweeted and back and forth about talking about The Last Jedi. And well, these are my comments, and sprinkled in with a little bit of Spike's, but I'll let Spike speak for himself at some point if he's so inclined to do his own review, which I encourage him to do. But in the meantime, what about The Last Jedi? I gotta tell you, I saw this movie twice, and I gotta tell you, when the first time I saw it, I had mixed feelings when I came out of it. Here's the thing. One of the things that I most struggled with is that I couldn't believe it was Luke Skywalker, how far the mighty had fallen. I mean, the guy was a bum. He was a space bum. He went, we had this hero of the, at the end of Return of the Jedi, the rebellion, the resistance is like, there's hundreds of thousands of resistance fighters that defeated the Emperor, along with Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, Princess Leia, and the rest of the Chewbacca, and the rest of the Rebel Alliance, defeating the Empire at the end of Return of the Jedi. And we are to believe now that less than 30 years later, there's less than 400 rebels left. And I don't think I didn't notice that in the movie. Did you notice in the movie that they called them mostly, they didn't really call them the Alliance, they just called them rebels, as opposed to the Resistance. They really wanted to focus on the fact that these were rebels. Somehow over the last 30 years, the Empire grew strong again, and the Alliance grew weak. How did that happen? That was never ever really explained. It just did. So that part of the narrative felt very forced. So very clearly, right away, you know that the so-called heroic accomplishments of Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, Princess Leia, and the power of the Force is indeed not very powerful at all, particularly in Luke. Not only is the Force weak, but they continue to double down on it. I mean, I don't know how many times in this movie they kept saying, "May the Force be with you." And how powerful is it if it only takes 30 years for the Empire to come back, and to have a new Emperor, Snoke, come out of nowhere, and then even Ben Solo so easily swayed to the dark side. And then Luke, this is a guy, Luke is such a powerful guy. Remember Luke? Remember that great guy that refused to believe that he'd lost his father, Anakin, to the dark side? And he believed that there was hope and that there was light, even in his father, Darth Vader. And he wouldn't give up on him, and he wouldn't give up on him. Well, guess what? It's revealed that Luke gave up on Ben. He gave up on Ben Solo. He gave up on his nephew, Not only did he give up on him, he actually had a moment where he almost wanted to kill him with a lightsaber. Is that something Luke Skywalker would do? I don't think so, but, whatever. You got to buy that in order to buy the narrative put forward in this movie. But in any event, Luke really hits rock bottom in this movie. He ends up secluded on an island where, in order to gain nutrients, he has to masturbate sea lions or sea lion aliens for milk. It's very, very disturbing, to say the very least. But I guess having gone to the movie, at least I got these glasses out of it, right? Anyways, which I think are kind of cool. But I will say this, the special effects are fantastic. The narrative is all over the place. There's no question. You've already heard the criticisms about the casino scene. Finn is a complete waste of skin in this movie. There's a new character, Rose, total waste of a character. They accomplish nothing. Their plot line is irrelevant. It could literally be removed from this entire movie. It's irrelevant. It serves no purpose other than to introduce us to, I guess, another planet that with more special effects, I guess, and but it doesn't actually serve the story. Don't get me wrong, this is a great popcorn movie. This is a great, I could watch this 3 or 4 times, okay? So this is going to make tons of movie. This is a Star Wars movie, okay? So it's going to be entertaining for generations. There's no question about it. But the story does have holes in it. Plot-wise, it's all over the place. There's inconsistencies. There's holes. So much doesn't make sense, particularly with the battleships. Apparently they don't know how gravity works, because gravity in space. There's a scene at the beginning they're dropping bombs into this dreadnought, and they're in space, so the bombs aren't going to drop. It's in space. They're going to float. They're not going to drop. That's not how space works. I mean, I realize we're suspending disbelief anyway for a Star Wars movie, but maybe don't, how much do you want us to suspend it, I guess. I just little nitpicky things, but whatever, it's cool special effects. Wow, most of the movie, it's like, it was like two turtles chasing each other, I think, as one reviewer described it, which is, I love that analogy, two turtles chasing each other. They're both capable of light speed, but apparently none of them want to jump to light speed. There's this huge Empire ship chasing the Rebel ships, and they're both, and they're waiting for this one to run out of gas. I don't know why this one just doesn't speed up or send the little ships over to get, it just didn't make any sense to me. But I mean, a whole hour they were playing this game. It was just ridiculous. And then there was even a scene where Ben was about to shoot the ship that he could sense that his mother was on it, which was a good scene. And he decided not to kill. He didn't take the kill shot to kill his own mother. I mean, he killed Han Solo. He killed his dad, Han Solo, in Force Awakens. He did not kill his mother, General Leia, in this movie. But other Empire fighters did blow General Leia into space, and then she utilizes the Force to literally fly back into the ship. So Leia's got these incredible Force powers, which we've never seen before, which I can accept, I guess. I mean, there's a lot about the Force we don't know. The expanded universe mythology and canon has been cast aside, so the only continuity we have for this new trilogy is the existing Lucas movies and Rogue One, so they can rewrite the Force however they want, I suppose. But since we've never really seen Leia use her powers before, that seemed a little bit odd, and it wasn't. It just wasn't. It didn't really have an epic feel to it. But she did manage to save her life. She got back on the ship, and then they were just, the Empire wanted to chase the rebels down, and we're supposed to believe that there's only 400 rebels, and they're slowly picking them off and killing them. I mean, they're that weak. It was so hard to believe. Meanwhile, Rey is, I don't know, Rey's on the planet with Luke, and of course she hands Luke the lightsaber at the end of Force Awakens, and then when we meet up with him, Luke looks at the lightsaber and he casts it aside, which was very shocking. But it's quickly revealed. I mean, he looks like a bum. He is a bum. As I said, he has a strange relationship with the sea animals in order to eat, I suppose. I don't know. And he refuses to teach Rey the ways of the Force. But then eventually wants to give her 3 lessons. He only gives her 2 lessons in the movie. Of course, this is Rey. She's like a Mary Sue. She knows everything, so she doesn't need the 3rd lesson because she's already spectacular and fantastic. And just like she just suddenly knew everything in the first movie, she knows everything now, so she doesn't need any help. We don't know anything about Rey's parents. That's not disclosed. It's what is disclosed is that apparently it's not important. It's not important who her parents are. And so when she realizes that it's not important who her parents are because she is special just the way she is, this is a very new way of thinking, and this is like the secret. This is like positive thinking for Star Wars fans. It's like, you don't need to be you don't need to know who your parents are. You're special just the way you are, right? It doesn't matter who your parents are. If you're an orphan, I mean, why not? I mean, Superman was an orphan, right? All kinds of superheroes are orphans. You don't need parents. You don't need to know who your parents are. Legacy isn't important. Relax. I mean, you don't need to be royalty to use the Force. Everyone has access to the Force, and that's the lesson. And that's ultimately one of the lessons that Luke teaches Rey, that the Force is everywhere. You can access it. Just you can focus your mind. It's the forces in between all life. It's the Force. You can have access. You don't need to be Force sensitive in order to be able to access that, essentially. So I guess that's really all the knowledge that Rey takes. Luke refuses to help Rey because he's in a fit of depression because he failed Ben Solo all those years before. He finds out that Han Solo's dead, so he's a complete basket case. He's fairly useless. He then Yoda shows up and says something to Luke that apparently inspires him. And Yoda basically tells Luke, he says, "Luke, listen, even we masters, in the end, we are what we overcome. We will always be what we overcome." Something to that effect. Basically stating that, you know, we are our failures, and our failures are our strengths. And because you have failed, that's one of your strengths. You know what to avoid. You've been there before. Now go and do what you got to do. And so he ends up at the end battling Kylo and helping the rebels and saving the fledgling population of the rebels that are only, I think there's only 250 left by the end of the movie. I don't think there's enough people for a third movie in this trilogy. They're in desperate need of some in the movie, in the continuity itself. They're going to have to recruit more people into the Rebel Alliance, so this is going to be a very boring third movie. In any event, surprising how Luke shows up at the end. But before we get there, Rey with Kylo and killing Snoke. That was a really epic scene. I enjoyed that. That was pretty cool. That was cool. Not learning anything about Snoke, it's clear why that was done. They're setting Kylo Ren is the bad guy. They're setting him up for the bad guy. And I got to be honest with you, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I want Kylo Ren to kick Rey's ass. I mean, he's an infinitely more he's a more interesting character, and plus I believe in him. I think he's pretty cool. I really do. It's gonna omelets and eggs. He realizes that in order to bring order to the galaxy, listen to the Empire, right? I mean, you can have a functioning society with a little bit of an iron hand. What's wrong with that? I mean, because what's the alternative? I mean, we all know how good the rebels are at governing, right? I mean, their governance, they couldn't even last 30 years. I mean, so they're fairly useless. So we know that whenever the Force is involved, when you're practicing the light side of the Force and you're trying to be a politician, just ask Leia. She's fairly useless. Very, very useless. What did Leia accomplish? She's an abysmal failure. We might all love Carrie Fisher, but her character, Princess General Leia, is a disastrous leader. She's horrible. Horrible. And the evidence is in the movie itself. That's the sad part here. Now, I hate saying that because I'm a classic trilogy fan. But the fact is, my heroes that I love from the trilogy, they are shit on in this movie. They just are. And you know what? It is what it is. I got to accept it. General Leia is a failure. Luke Skywalker is a failure. Yoda is a failure. As a matter of fact, who would have thought that Master Luke would look worse than Yoda? I mean, at least Yoda had an excuse. He's over 900 years old. But Luke, buddy, come on, man. Would it have killed you? I don't know. Work out a little bit before you took the role? Seriously, Mark. Anyways, getting to the end there, killing Snoke, and then clearly Rey and Kylo have a falling out. Kylo wants Rey to join him, and of course Rey refuses, and she embraces the light side of the Force and takes off, and then there's that ultimate confrontation at the end between the Empire and these fledgling rebels, and then Luke is ultimately revealed. Force projects himself across the galaxy to ultimately hold off the forces of Kylo Ren and his knights, who we never really got to see fight very much. It was very disappointing. And Rey, of course, at the end moves the huge mountain rocks. She moves them using the Force in order to save the rebels that were escaping the mountain. And ultimately, Luke Skywalker dies, becoming one with the Force because of the power he exhibited in Force projecting himself across the galaxy. All in all, I think that for classic fans like myself, I'm disappointed with how General Leia was portrayed. Just like I was very disappointed with Han Solo in Force Awakens, I was very disappointed with Master Luke here. However, I will say this. I need to explain, because I'm a lover of Star Wars. I need to explain it to myself in such a way that I want to try to get the most out of it. And so this is how I tell myself how I enjoy the ending. I'm trying to convince myself that what Luke did was kind of cool, and I get it from Buddhist principles. So I look at it this way. I think Luke entered into a phase where he was kind of like an alcoholic, and he became sort of he almost like an addict, but he was addicted to it. He was depressed. He went into he developed a kind of self-loathing and a state of depression, and he became addicted to that depression. And like most addicts, he had to go through almost like the 12 steps in order to get the hell out of it. And his journey throughout the movie and his ultimately achievement of what the Buddhists would call nirvana, where he ultimately became one with the Force, was very interesting. Because and I think he utilized 4 concepts that really, for me, stand out. Because one of the things that stands out for Luke in this movie, Master Luke, is that he never killed anybody. And I find that very interesting. He never killed Kylo Ren. And to my knowledge, he never killed, I don't believe Luke killed anyone in the final battle. He never used Force. He never harmed anyone. Now, that can't be said of Luke and all the other, when he was in the other Star Wars movies. But in this one, he never harmed anyone. And I think that's very noble of him. He utilized the light side of the Force. Not only did he win and achieve victory over Kylo Ren and hold off the forces enough to allow Rey to escape, to begin training, and ultimately the Force could grow, the light side of the Force could grow and spread across the galaxy. But he did so without having to kill a single living soul, as almost like a testament to the living Force, which Qui-Gon was a big proponent of in I believe Phantom Menace. But so it's interesting. The other thing is the concept of surrender. Only by surrendering can you ultimately achieve victory. And that's what Luke did. He surrendered to the power of the Force. He hit rock bottoms. Often people, when you have tragedy in your life, or you have addiction, or you're depressed, it's only after you hit rock bottom that you can build yourself up again. Because when you hit rock bottom in your life, there's only 2 options. 1, you either kill yourself, or 2, you get up your ass and you do something. Well, Luke obviously decided to. That inspired him. He surrendered, and he realized he had nothing to lose. And only by surrendering can you open your mind up to all that is, and you enter into that deep meditative state. And of course, him having the power of the Force, he was able to maximize it to its full potential. So in many respects, the fact that he went through all the pain, it was the pain and suffering that he went through that ultimately made it possible for him to hit rock bottom and to achieve that point of surrender and ultimately be able to focus. So in that sense, his suffering was necessary. And that's a concept in Buddhist teachings. Basically, to summarize the point I want to make is, from a Buddhist perspective, we surrender to win, we give away to keep, we suffer to get well, and we die to live. It's that paradox. And that's ultimately what Luke Skywalker did here, Master Luke. And he died to live. He gave his life so that ultimately he could become one with the Force. He surrendered in order to win. By surrendering, he was able to open his mind up to the Force. And he gave it away in order to keep. He gave away. It's like when you know the power of giving. When you give of yourself to others, you get back what you give. And when you realize that you're going to get back what you give, you're very careful with what you give away, right? So you can give away compassion, you can give away power, you can give away all that. And what did Luke give away at the end? He utilized the Force, but he did it to protect, and he didn't harm. I mean, now of course he was Force projecting, but ultimately what he gave was himself. He gave his presence, he gave his spirit, and ultimately at the end, by doing so, he gave his physical form up. He gave up his physical form, and he became one with the Force. And anyways, I think in that way I find it very uplifting. And when I look at it from that perspective, I think that it is the highest point that any person could leave this earth. And that what is ultimately can be seen as uplifting for Luke Skywalker. That he was a hero when he was young, and in the middle of his life, the high point was Return of the Jedi. But for 30 years after Return of the Jedi, his downhill slide began to ultimately he finally hit rock bottom with The Last Jedi, only to, in his moment of surrender, achieve his greatest victory and become one with the Force. And he died with a smile on his face, content with knowing that the Force was, at least in his view, in good hands because of Rey and the future that the Force is in everyone. And one of the final scenes with that boy on that casino planet, moving the broom with the Force, clearly implying that there are more younglings out there that have the power of the Force. The Force is spreading across the galaxy, and we know that if the Force is spreading across the galaxy, so is the dark side. And so that's interesting. So that's really the new mythology that they're setting up. So I know what Rian Johnson, the director, has tried to do, and I think he accomplished that. I do agree that this has lots of ammunition. This has lots of stuff that you can mine for future movies. Again, I could sit here and plug. There was problems in this narrative. In particular, I think one other character that stood out that I thought was interesting, and Spike mentioned this, was Benicio del Toro's character. Tero's character. I'll call him Benicio. He's sort of like the dark Han Solo. He's genuinely someone who, unlike Han Solo, who went from a rogue to being a good guy at the end of Star Wars, Benicio basically went from being that rogue to being the bad guy, to generally showing indifference because nothing really matters. And he's almost indicative of the show, that nothing really matters on this show. And his attitude was, look, today you guys lost, next time you guys will win. It's cyclical, relax. He's indifferent. He doesn't care. He doesn't pick a side. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. You know, he doesn't care one way or the other. He can sleep at night knowing that he's done things where people get killed, because he knows that the next day he'll do something where people don't get killed and some people will live. It's almost like a very indifferent view of life, that it's a cycle. You know, sometimes the good guys win, sometimes they don't. Just like it's the cycle now. The cycle's starting anew for Star Wars because now the Empire is back. You know, there's a lot of analogies and scenes that were reminiscent of The Empire Strikes Back, but the outcome was slightly different. Because of the attitude of this particular movie, and that indifference really shown throughout the movie, that, you know, really there isn't a lot of hope here. And it didn't really end. It ended with Luke dying and giving his life, and you can see maybe there's hope because there's Jedi elsewhere. This was actually, in many ways, could be seen as a very depressing movie. And there's a lot of contradictions in the plot lines. Like, the Finn and the Rose storyline was so useless. I don't know why those characters are in the movie. It was useless. The lack of chemistry between Rey and Finn is absolutely palpable. I don't know why they bothered with. They really should. I mean, they should have let Finn sacrifice himself. That would have been a good death for him. That would have been cool. It really, they should have let Leia die. That would have been a cool death for her. I mean, or at least have her go kill her another way. But I mean, keeping Leia alive, I don't know if it really serves much of a purpose, quite frankly. But I guess we'll see. We'll see what they're going to do now that, unfortunately, of course, with the tragic death of Carrie Fisher, how they're going to work that in for the third one. But in any event, guys, that's my rant on The Last Jedi. Guys, it's Christmas time. Have a Merry Christmas. I just want you to know as well, before the new year, I'll be putting out a top 25 list. I read a lot of comics a month, so I'll be, I got a very interesting top 25 list, I think. In the meantime, guys, hit the subscribe button, go out and see Last Jedi, and Comic Boom, out.